Chingus, welcome to this political, historical, and sociological channel. Today I want to talk about this because I think if you are from America, from the USA, you should know. Well, US turns its back on its homeless as it sends millions of dollars to Ukraine, while Joe Biden's administration pushes a 100 billion plus purse to Ukraine. States like Missouri implement fines against people who intend to sleep on the streets or the parks or public places. Any place that is state owned. Starting in 2023, homeless people who are caught sleeping in a public space in Missouri will be sanctioned, first with a warning and then with a fine of $750 or 15 days in jail. But you think these people have the necessary money to pay this fine? Really not. They will end in the jail for 15 days. The law has been applied in several cities in the United States, but one of them is the city of Kansas in the state of Missouri. This type of fine is intended to get people to approach viable shelters. However, those in charge of the shelters think that the decision may have useless consequences. It was reported by the city's police department. They say that we exist to help people get out of homelessness. Homelessness is complex. There are people who are in crisis. So, housing alone is not going to change their lives. Eric Berger, executive director of Shelter KC, told local television station KMBC that this is happening while the U.S. Congress has allocated nearly $3.6 billion to provide assistance to the homeless, an increase of 13%. In addition, the agency has planned to allocate about $6.4 billion to develop projects in low-income regions. However, it seems that such assistance no longer works due to the serious situation of the indigent. According to the budget approved by the U.S. Congress for 2023, nearly $3.6 billion will be allocated by homeless. Additional to the $6.4 billion will be allocated for development projects in low-income areas and more than US $1.5 billion for the construction of 10,000 rental units. The total figure is below the more than $51 billion the US has already sent to Ukraine in military support, not counting the $45 billion it plans to distribute through 2023, according to the estimation by the Kiel Institute for the World Economy. All this spending in Ukraine has generated various criticisms against the Biden's administration, which is accused of prioritizing the financing of the Ukrainian conflict rather than attending to domestic problems in his country. All this spending for Ukraine has generated various criticisms against the Biden's administration, which is accused of prioritizing the financing of the Ukrainian conflict rather than attending to domestic problems. The critics, Republican Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who called Kiev the 51st state, and Kentucky gubernatorial candidate Jeffrey Young, who accused the Democrats of sponsoring Nazism, of sponsoring the Adolf ideology, stand out. The problem of homeless goes beyond a shortage of housing or lack of employment. In the last decade, complaints about the gentrification and displacements of people in this California city illustrate the structural problem facing the U.S., where 53% of homeless people living in shelters and 40% living on the streets are employed full-time or part-time, according to the 2021 study by the University of Chicago. These people have jobs, but they no gain the necessary money to rent a house or a department. With the arrival of Dutch companies in the cradle of American counterculture, thousands of people were forced to leave their homes because many landlords who previously rented the locals preferred to invest. Welcome people who came to San Francisco to work as developers. Since 2015, an increase in the number of the evictions of local residents is reported, and although during the contingency there was drop due to the measures that prevented tenants for non-payment of rent, media such as San Francisco Chronicle reported that since October 2021 there has been an increase in evictions. According to the San Francisco Rent Board, an institution that monitors almost 3/4 of the homes that are rented in the city, 40% of those evictions are related to not payments, that is, tenants are unable to pay rents. According to the data from the Low Income Housing Coalition, a person needs a salary of $40.96 a year, $23 an hour to be able to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. When the federal minimum wage is at $7.25 an hour. In other words, it does not matter if there is the possibility of renting an apartment. People earning the minimum wage are unable to rent a home. Contrary to what one might think, units that are built to support people in homelessness and shelters also end up getting out their tenants for various causes related to alleged bad behavior. Of a San Francisco Chronicle report denounced that between January of 2019 and May 2022, about 4,100 homeless people were evicted from hotel rooms for various reasons, such as mental health, character, or other problems, without this having to be reported to the authorities. According to the San Francisco Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, only 2% of residents are evicted from their homes each year. However, the newspaper warns that this figure only counts in cases that are taken to the court when tenants appeal the eviction. However, this does not happen in all cases, and many times they leave their homes voluntarily after being threatened by their landlords. California, one of the wealthiest states in the United States, tops the list of the states with the highest number of homeless people, with 171 million people living on the streets, according to the biennial census of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is almost 20 times the last census. That is one homeless person for every 230 residents. According to the data from the Center of Health Journalists at the University of Southern California, between 45% and 50% of the homeless in San Francisco are people of African descent, a group that represents 5.6% of the city's total population. At the same time, the U.S. has decided to send more than $51 billion to Ukraine as part of its military and economic support. It should be noted that according to the data published by the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, this figure does not include the $45 billion that the U.S. plans to allocate to the Slavic country by this year, 2023. Therefore, the new military aid Kiev has provoked several criticisms of the administration of Biden, who is blamed for considering the crisis in Ukraine as a priority, and not paying attention to the challenge facing the United States. That is more important than any conflict or sending money to a stranger country. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has called Kiev the 51st U.S. state. Eric Bolder has pointed out that the increase in the military budget to defend Ukraine and Taiwan was only a pretext to add more fuel to the military-industrial complex of the U.S. to eliminate more people. Joe Biden, in the same day, signed into law $760 billion defense budget bill for next year, which is $24 billion more than Biden had requested. The Pentagon, and represents a 5% growth over the previous year, supposedly the largest spending bill in U.S. history. The measure was taken after the so-called National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, was approved last December 27 by the U.S. Senate with 89 votes in favor and 10 against. The journalist lamented that although the U.S., like Russia and Iran, has not faced horrible invasions, but continues to allocate funds to manufacture the devices, warning that this completely crazy situation will continue to push the United States to the edge of the abyss. He denounced that instead of supplying food for its people, the U.S. produces them, kind of artifacts. This decision has been taken amid escalating tensions with Moscow, as the U.S.-led North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, has recently stepped up its military activities in the form of drills and deployments in the Ukraine border with Russia. But I would really like to know in the comments what do you think about this, because this conflict has no sense and it doesn't have nothing to do with the United States situation and the European situation. Let's see how the Europeans and the Americans are paying these decisions of their government. This was the most horrible winter they had. They had no gas, they had no oil, no light, and there the cold is terrible, and these people has passed hungry and situations very complicated, all because his governments don't want to take care about their people, not of this conflict. But I would really like to know in the comments what do you think about this. If you like, I will love if you give me a thumbs up, subscribe and share. Thank you very much and see you in the next video. Bye! 泣いちゃダメ